Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I'm Alfredo Brown. Joined as always, we got Dave Kluge. Week 1 of NFL action is here. And you know what, Dave? Everyone's, I assume everyone has done their fantasy drafts at this point, and
I've still got 4 more between now and kickoff. I've got 2
sick.
tonight and I've got 2 tomorrow.
You're sick. Like, just stop. There's a point where you can stop. How many teams do you have so far? How many leagues?
It's going to be about close to 30 managed leagues this year. It's going to be, I've got like a 3-hour block every Tuesday evening just for waivers.
A 3-hour block for waivers.
Hey,
you don't watch movie trailers. You don't read restaurant reviews, but you'll do a 3-hour block for waivers.
Yeah. I mean,
this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp. Talk to somebody.
I'm stoked, man. I can't believe it. Like we're recording this. It's Tuesday morning right now. This holiday weekend really like sped up the time that football is going to be here. Like tomorrow's the last day without football. Like there's no football tomorrow, and then football Thursday, football Friday. We get another day off, and then a full slate of games on Sunday. Like it is here, dude. I could not be more excited.
My wife was so mad to find out there was football on Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Every year she forgets that there's football on multiple days. Anyways, that's enough here. Everyone, for the most part, has done their drafts, and everyone is already thinking, I got to cut this one player from my team already. I should probably go pick up this other guy. And
asking themselves, did I make a mistake taking Jamar Chase at 104?
Oh, yeah. I've already gotten a couple of those. But what we're going to do is Dave and I are going to look at some of the players that are likely on your waiver wire. We did this by seeing who is available in at least 70% of sleeper leagues. We actually just did the draft for the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show Listener League. That was a lot of fun. We're looking at some of the waivers that are available there. Dave, we've got 12 players, so let's not waste any time. We're going to do this little kind of sort of maybe rapid fire, okay? Roughly like 90 seconds, 2 minutes per player. We'll get through these. We got 12 players that we are looking at that you could potentially be adding off waivers before the season even starts. Dave, why don't you kick us off with Jordan Mason, running back for the San Francisco 49ers?
You know, Elijah Mitchell has been the RB2 in San Francisco for so long now that I think people are just conditioned to take Elijah Mitchell in the event that Christian McCaffrey potentially gets hurt. But I think it kind of just got lost in the fold of all the NFL news over the last couple of weeks that Elijah Mitchell's on IR right now, and Jordan Mason has had a great preseason. He is the RB2 right now. And I was in a draft just this weekend where Elijah Mitchell was drafted and Jordan Mason went undrafted. And that's crazy to me. I think people just aren't paying attention to the news here. So like we said, you know, everybody is available in 70+% of leagues right now. Jordan Mason is available in 72% of leagues. And it looks like Christian McCaffrey is going to play this weekend. So you're not getting, you know, a bye-week filler or anything here, but this is just one of the most valuable handcuffs to have in fantasy. Obviously, nobody's going to be able to replicate what Christian McCaffrey does, but we have seen so many running backs be successful in this San Francisco offense. So Jordan Mason right now, I don't know if it's hyperbolic to say that he is probably the most valuable handcuff in fantasy football, and he's available in almost 3 out of 4 leagues right now. So he's the priority ad for me. If you're looking through your waiver wire and Jordan Mason is still available, you can definitely cut your QB2, your tight end 2, your wide receiver 6, whatever it is, and stash Jordan Mason, because in the event that McCaffrey does miss a game or two, Jordan Mason's an immediate top 10 option.
You bring up a couple other things there, which, by the way, yes, get the handcuff, backup running back, whatever you want to call it, in the San Francisco offense. The offense is just too good. Like, get the next guy up in that offense no matter what. But you mentioned you could cut your quarterback 2, your tight end 2. If those are always the first guys to get cut, why do we trick ourselves into drafting them every year? I feel like those are always the first ones to go.
Yeah, because people see other people doing it and they do it and they don't want to miss out, and they say, oh no, like all these high value QB2s are going off the board. I better draft Trevor Lawrence. And yeah, there's no reason for it. You know, deal with your quarterback's bye week when it comes about. There's no reason to be drafting backups at the 1Z position. Just load up your bench with as many RB2s as possible, and Jordan Mason should be a part of that bench stash.
Dave, before we keep going on here, we got 10 more players we're going to talk about. I just want to remind everybody, you got a bunch of ways that you can enjoy the show. First is here on youtube.com/@FootballGuysFantasy. If you're watching this video, take a moment to like this video, comment down below with some of the players that you've already picked up off waivers or guys that you're thinking about it, and we'll do our best to answer each and every one of those questions. Of course, subscribe to the channel where you're going to get the episodes here on video before they come out on audio, so you're always going to be ahead of the curve. And then for you audio listeners, if you're listening right now, you're on your Apple, you're on your Spotify podcast app, you're listening, you're saying, I'm enjoying this. These guys are like, they're just smart enough where I'm having fun, but they're not too smart. And I like that. Go ahead and leave a review, a little nice little 5-star review. It's helped us. Dave, you told me this weekend we jumped up. We're at
Did
4.8 stars now
we did?
on
Yeah, we
Apple.
got a
That
negative review bombed when we first started the show, but we're crawling back up. 4.9 in no time.
and that's we are going to use that excuse. We were review bombed. People did not like. Never mind. I'm going to leave it at that. Anyways,
Mark
let's go to
Beatty, I
our next.
remember. I remember it.
They look too similar. I don't like this. All right, let's go to our next player on here. Dave, you want to talk about Quentin Johnston, wide receiver for the
Mm.
Chargers, available in 80% of leagues. Why do we need to go grab him?
I mean, I just think it's worth it for the potential upside. So much this offseason we heard about the drops and, we'd see those cycling around on Twitter every now and then. But this team needs a wide receiver one. Like, it's still a Justin Herbert offense where he is going to throw the ball, I think, more than people expect. Obviously it's Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, and things might slow down and grind out the clock a little bit with some running. But I still want to bet on Justin Herbert. And I think the best way to get in is to draft Quentin Johnston. Now, I expect Lad McConkey to be the wide receiver one there. I think Joshua Palmer is going to be involved, but right now, Quentin Johnston's available in almost 80% of leagues. You can pick him up for free right now, and you'll know quickly after week one if Quentin Johnston was able to take that step forward. He's gotten some pretty good buzz out of camp from the staff in Los Angeles so far. And this isn't me saying like Quentin Johnston, deep sleeper, you need to pick this guy up, league winner, anything like that. It's just saying pick him up, see what happens week one. And if he's not a focal point of the offense, you can cut him and move on because there's going to be somebody that surprises you on the waiver wire. But he is just one of those no risk with a ton of upside picks, a former first round pick with game breaking athleticism. He was misutilized last year in how they were trying to use him, but if their game plan this year is just to feed him the ball on short, easy routes and let him do things after the catch, that's where he excelled at TCU. So I think he's worth the stash just in the hopes that maybe his utilization changes this year, is a little bit more friendly to his skill set. And at the end of the day, this is still a former first round pick who has a ton of athleticism on a wide open roster with a good quarterback. So I think it's a bet worth making, even if it's just holding on to him for 1 week to see what he looks like.
Yeah, I won't do it. I won't do it. But
Fair enough.
I respect what you're throwing out here because all the points make absolute sense. I'm not saying that what you said doesn't make sense. I just don't think he's very good, which is
I mean, I agree with you, but I'm also wrong from time to time.
yeah,
And he's been getting
and
good
we
buzz, and he's a good
yeah,
athlete on a wide open chart. Like it's worth the very minimal risk, in my opinion.
we have to be willing to be wrong. And I mean, that's what a lot of this is. That's what this whole episode is, right? It's
Right.
us admitting already we were wrong about someone we drafted. We're willing to go pick up somebody before the season. And even then, like these are ugly, kind of yucky names. Some of them it's sexy and there's some major upside, but some of these it's I even put a player in here that I don't think is very good at football, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Next guy on here that I want to talk about, Tyrone Tracy. He's available in 82% of leagues, which was honestly kind of shocking. And I think there's another player who got maybe ignored because of the injuries in the preseason, or maybe he just wasn't as much of a common household name as we thought. I think the people that are in the know, that are watching fantasy football stuff in June, are like, yeah, Tyrone Tracy, he's sleeper, breakout. He's a wide receiver turned into a running back. He's going to be great. And then, those who show up in late August, early September are like, I have no idea who this guy is. He's a rookie on the Giants. The Giants suck. But what I'm looking at here is, Dave, what you and I have talked about a bunch, which is Tyrone Tracy is a guy that has pass catching upside. He's got incredible explosive ability. If you just turn on any of the tape from his time in Purdue, fantastic there. And he's a guy that's still learning the position, so he's going to be getting even better. Devin Singletary is we call him a system knower. He's like one of those guys that just he knows the system, so he's easy to plug in. He may not necessarily be the kind of guy that is creating explosive plays for that offense. And
Mm.
Tyrone Tracy will find his way onto that field. He's already second on the depth chart ahead of Eric Gray, who has been there. Mind you, Tracy was injured and still came back second on the depth chart. So that makes me pretty excited for what that could mean in the future. And especially if anything just goes awry with the Giants here. And it's very, very possible there's a blow up, by week 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever we want to call it. We could be seeing a lot of Tyrone Tracy. So that could be really exciting.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Tyrone Tracy. Been talking about him all off season. Already have him drafted on a ton of rosters, so you're not going to find him on the waivers in any leagues that I'm in. But definitely worth the bench stash here. Malik Neighbors is going to be the best weapon on this offense, but it's not crazy to think that Tyrone Tracy could end up being the number 2 weapon on this offense if Devin Singletary continues to be the player that we've seen over the years.
And Tyrone Tracy, just wanted to double check. He is rostered in our listener league. So, by the way, our listeners, it was very sharp. It was very sharp, which is surprising
It was a
because
tough league.
I feel like we are kind of sharp. These guys were drafting like absolute sharp sharks. That's a double down.
Guess who's got
Dave,
Jordan Mason in that league?
I know. Yeah, you did it. I'm very proud of you. Let's go to our next player on here. And boy, this one does not shock me one bit, but I know you're going to have a good reasoning here. Talk to us about Justin Fields, quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's available in 84% of leagues.
Yeah, and this is definitely for your 2 quarterback and super flex leagues mostly, or if you're in a league with very deep benches where a lot of people have already settled on a QB2. Justin Fields isn't going to be the starter. Like it looks like Russell Wilson is going to be the starter, but it's very easy to imagine a world where Russ Wilson comes out in week 1, crashes and burns, and they make a pivot to Justin Fields. And we know that when Justin Fields is on the field, might not be a good quarterback, but he is a very good fantasy quarterback. If we knew he was starting for a full 17 games, like if Russ Wilson wasn't a part of this depth chart, we'd probably be drafting Justin Fields in the same region that we're drafting Anthony Richardson and Kyler Murray, where he's probably going in that 5 to 7 range because we know that's what he can do on a weekly basis with that rushing upside. So Justin Fields is a guy that I'm okay picking up right now and stashing just in case things do collapse in Pittsburgh. If Justin Fields becomes the starter, we're looking at a weekly top 5 quarterback option, and you're not getting anybody else on the waiver wire with that sort of upside. So again, this is only for leagues where you've got 7, 8 or more bench spots, or where you have to start 2 quarterbacks, or you get a super flex spot. I'm not saying that you need to go out and get Justin Fields in every league, but definitely worth a stash just in case things don't work out for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Russell Wilson the way that they hope.
This is not me going against what you're saying, but I got curious and wanted to look this up. Pittsburgh Steelers, the first 4 weeks, seem to have what could be an easy road here. They're going up against the Atlanta Falcons, which that defense is much improved. Don't get me wrong, but beatable. Denver Broncos, Los Angeles Chargers, Indianapolis Colts. Now they could be 2-2. They could be 4-0. The Steelers actually look like they could start out pretty nice. And then after that, it's Dallas, it's the Raiders, it's the Jets, it's the Giants, and then a bye. It's going. I think it's going to freak a lot of people out if the Steelers start out this season like 6-2 going into the bye. I think it's gonna drive everyone nuts.
It's possible. I mean, this is a team that every single year somehow just keeps squeaking out wins. Um, I'm not of the belief that Russ Wilson is dust, the way that a lot of other people have painted his portrait over the last couple of years. But he hasn't looked great, and I think that he very much so needs the right system. And I don't know if he's going to work in this system here in Pittsburgh. So I think Justin Fields is worth the stash just in case it doesn't work out.
Oh yeah, and especially with the kind of upside he's got top 5 quarterback upside. If just Russ misses any time with an injury, he is a bit older. It's right there for us. Okay, so I sort of teased that I was putting a player on this list that I didn't even know if they're really good at football. He's not a guy that I really liked his college film. He's not a guy that really showed out as a rookie last year, but he still remains the only true backup in this offense, and he's kind of the ideal handcuff.
I just want to say, like, if players are good at football, they're probably getting drafted in fantasy football leagues. So I think a lot of the guys that
Yeah.
we're talking about here is, guys that you could pick up that nobody else wanted in your fantasy football draft. Most of them probably aren't very good at football.
Well, but that's the thing, right? Is like how when you sit there and you're looking at your waiver wire, you somehow have to quantify like, I'll pick this guy up because I'm willing to be wrong. Like it's okay if I'm wrong, but you're almost so the player here. Before I just keep teasing everybody, is Tank Bigsby, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I think the opportunity if he takes over as the lead running back due to something happening to Travis Etienne, maybe he just wants to go on an eat, pray, love trip. I'm not going to say the other thing that could happen to a football player on the field. But, Tank Bigsby ends up as the RB1 on that team. It's a great role for him. It's great for fantasy football. I don't know that he's very good. And I don't know that he would utilize and be utilized in the same way that Travis Etienne is utilized. I don't know he would take advantage of it the same way that Travis Etienne does. But I think he's a guy that you have to have on your radar, and you have to be willing to pick him up right now. He's available in nearly 90% of leagues. He was Football Guy's consensus running back 61. So he was pretty much going undrafted anywhere. And I don't think we see that a lot, Dave, on offenses that we expect to be good, clear cut running back two on that offense. We're just like, you know what? Don't draft him. Don't draft him. He's going outside of what we would consider to be 32 times 2, the top 64 running backs here when we were ranking him. So it's just it seems like I'm not alone here. Excuse me, I was looking at the wrong one. That's Samaje Perine. Tank Bigsby was running back 61. So he was right there on that fringe. So this is a guy that, like, we barely think that he should be on your fantasy football teams, but I'm willing to be wrong on this one because the opportunity could be great as a handcuff.
Yeah, no shocker here, but I am very overweight on Tank Bigsby. Around 17 and 18, it was just such an easy pick to make this year for exactly what you said. He's a tweaked angle away from being the RB1 on a good offense. And we knew last year the big story in the offseason was that they wanted to get Tank Bigsby involved, and he was in week one, and then he fumbled twice, and then he lost his role. And, if he can get those ball security issues in check, I think that he's going to be more involved than people expect him to be in Jacksonville. This was a pretty good prospect who just kind of had some bad luck in year one, but wouldn't surprise me at all to see him a part of the week one game plan. And then he's got massive contingent upside if something were to happen to Travis Etienne. So yeah, easy guy to pick up right here.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll be watching his career with great interest this season. Dave, I sort of spoiled it. Sorry, that was a trailer for this next player. You wanted to talk about Samaje Perine, running back now for the Kansas City Chiefs. Which, by the way, like, this is something we've been talking about, that Samaje Perine was the most likely to be cut or moved from the Denver Broncos, and here he is in Kansas City to ruin everyone's Isaiah Pacheco shares and passing down work and all that fun stuff. Because Samaje Perine is a very capable back. It's not a sexy name. It's not someone that we're going out of our way to draft, but he's actually a really good waiver wire stash, and I was kind of upset when you put this one on the list first because I wanted to be able to use this name.
Yeah, and I think the only reason he was cut is because he and Javonte Williams do kind of all of the same things, and Sean Payton
Right.
wants to have all of these, different running backs that can specialize in different parts of the game. And Samaje Perine was just there's no use for him with Javonte Williams there. And I know he's not the best running back. He's been in the league for a while. He's a grizzled veteran at this point. He's on his third team now, but he led the league in yards per route run last year. And I know that's going to shock a lot of people, but he is a pass catching specialist. So this is specifically in your PPR leagues here. That's something that Isaiah Pacheco, we were hopeful that maybe he can grow that role a little bit. We see a handful of games every now and then where he'll be involved as a pass catcher, and we say, let's see that over 17 games. And it just hasn't really happened yet. We saw Jerick McKinnon was kind of the thorn in his side through the first couple of years, and now I think Samaje Perine is going to be that same type of player. I mean, he doesn't need to be a full-time player on this offense. He could see 20 to 30% of the snaps, and if he maintains his pass catching efficiency that we've seen over the years, that alone is enough to kind of give you RB3 flex consideration on a weekly basis. So much of the talk over the last week or so now since this signing happened is like, does Samaje Perine matter? And I think what gets lost in that discussion is that the Chiefs were trying to trade for Perine months ago and they couldn't get a deal done. And then they were able to just pick him up off of waivers, but he fits the exact need that the Kansas City Chiefs need in a pass catching running back. So, available right now in almost 90% of leagues, I believe. 93% of leagues. So
Oh.
Samaje Perine is absolutely somebody you could pick up, and Carson Steele is going to be involved, and Isaiah Pacheco is going to be involved. But Perine could have some weekly standalone value as the pass catching back here, and has enormous contingent upside if something were to happen to Pacheco. So again, this is a guy just sitting out there right now for free. You don't want to plug him into your week one lineups, but absolutely worth picking up, stashing on your bench, and seeing what his role looks like in week one.
Yeah, I think there's a very real possibility here where I know they're not exactly the same player, but they do have similar skill sets in that they work on passing downs really well. That Samaje Perine can kind of fill some of that Jerick McKinnon void that was left behind. I think the Chiefs just don't want to have to rely on any one single player, unless that player is Patrick Mahomes. Like, they are willing to have twos and threes and fours at every single position. And having Samaje Perine on this roster, I mean, when Jerick McKinnon, I'm looking at it right now, last time he played a 17 game season, we're talking about a guy that scored 10 touchdowns and caught 50 plus passes. I'm not suggesting that Samaje Perine is absolutely going to do that, but it's within the realm of possibility here with Isaiah Pacheco even still as the lead running back. So yeah, this might be my favorite ad, just based on how available he is and how easy it is and what it could be in that Chiefs offense. I think I like that one the most, Dave.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who like doesn't have a lot of really exciting efficiency metrics or anything like that, but he just does the things that coaches like, and that's why he's always had a role. Every step along in his career, he has been involved in the offense because he does those gritty things that are required from NFL running backs, and that's why he's 29 years old now and still playing football because he does those things, and he's going to have a legitimate snap share on a good offense.
Yeah, he's the Udonis Haslam of running backs. The Chiefs love
Yeah.
that kind of thing here if they're
Yep.
going on a championship run. All right, next guy on here that I want to talk about is Demarcus Robinson, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams, who's available in 90% of leagues. This is the guy who is the Rams wide receiver 3. Like, it is right now set. That is the depth chart. Don't necessarily believe it's going to be changing anytime soon, except I know that there's been a lot of hype around who's the new guy there in Los Angeles. Is it Whittingham or
Jordan
Whittington?
Whittington. Yeah.
Whittington?
Which I think what that is, sorry to just take over your talking
No,
point for
do
a
it.
second here, but with Jordan Whittington, I think people are so excited to recapture lightning in a bottle after the day 3 wide receiver hit last year in Puka Nacua that now they're just wish casting that Jordan Whittington is going to be this year's Puka Nacua. But the reality is, if you paid attention to the Los Angeles Rams training camp reports and listen to the beat writers, what they were saying out of there, Demarcus Robinson is very clearly the wide receiver 3 here. We know this team runs a ton of wide receiver 3 sets or 3 wide receiver sets. He's not coming off the field. Jordan Whittington, he's going to be kind of a utility player. I think they're going to work him in the backfield and they're going to give him some touches here. He might see some snaps on special teams, but he is not this year's Puka Nacua. He's not even going to be a full-time player in this offense.
Oh, you said that a little too hard. Now, if he does become this year's Puka Nacua,
He
you're
won't.
you're
He
you're
won't.
gonna hear it. Oh,
Yeah.
you doubled down. Oh, I
Yeah.
gave you an
He
out.
won't. No,
I
I'm
gave you a
not taking
golden
it out. No,
parachute.
there is no this year's Puka Nacua, and it certainly isn't Jordan Whittington.
Well, someone is gonna be next year's Jordan Whittington. You just wait. But yeah, back to Demarcus Robinson. The whole thing here is that there's not only some really solid upside as being the wide receiver 3 in this offense because there is no Tyler Higbee, which I almost put Colby Parkinson on here, and I had to stop myself from just putting a whole bunch of Rams because that's just let's not get carried away. But there's
Zach
some excitement.
Evans?
Shut up. No, we're not doing that. No, no, we're not going there. But like without having a true tight end threat, the wide receiver 3 becomes something legit in this offense, and it's probably not anything crazy, but there's already some decent fantasy upside there in that offense without an injury. However, if an injury does occur, which both of these wide receivers up front have been
Mhm.
known to have their moments, Demarcus Robinson goes in, and Dave, last year when he got opportunities, we're looking at 10 targets in a game. He had 4 straight games with a touchdown. Like, we know that that kind of upside is there. Dave, from week 13 to week 17, we're talking about 14 points, 13 points, 14, 19, 11. There's
Mhm.
not a lot of wide receivers that are going to be 90% available that have that instant kind of upside the second they are plugged into a lineup. That's kind of how I think we all viewed Josh Palmer last year. We were like, oh, cool. He's the handcuff coming in for Mike Williams, who's out, or Keenan Allen, or whatever it was. And he would get you those 10, 11 points. That's where I think Demarcus Robinson is. He's going to be that Josh Palmer this year for the Rams, who honestly, I think the Rams offense is going to be maybe even better than last year.
Yeah, I mean, they got a healthy Cooper Cup to start the year, which they didn't have
Yep.
last year. They've got 2 good running backs, which they didn't have last year. They got year 2 under Puka Nacua. It's really easy to see a world where the Rams, I talked about it like nonstop early last year that I had the Rams as, one of the favorites to win in the NFC, and it didn't work out for them, but they were just such an underrated team last year. Matthew Stafford was playing great ball and just had a terrible touchdown rate until the final month of the season. But yeah, I mean, they've got everything on offense. It's not crazy to think that they're going to be another offensive powerhouse this year.
Yeah. Let's go to our next guy on here, Dave. You are bringing up a tight end, Greg Dulcich, who you and I both really liked him last year because of the injuries and because of all the strife. It's a fun word to say on the
Yeah.
Denver Broncos last season. It just didn't happen. It didn't happen, but we're hoping that it can happen again this year. And he's available in 93% of leagues, and he would become that tight end 2 for many rosters, the one that we're willing to part ways with, but also there's some good upside there if he hits.
Now, this is also for your deeper leagues. If Taysom Hill is available. That's obviously the guy you want to add. TJ Hawkinson, another great stash that you can, get for some upside. But if you really found yourself playing the waiting on tight end game and you lost that game and you're just sitting there with a terrible, duo or trio of tight ends, I think adding Greg Dulcich in that mix does give you potential for upside. He's still just 24 years old, very, very, very young player. And like you said, last year was just nonstop injuries, injury after injury all year long. But our goldfish brains kind of forget how things were 2 years ago. And like 2 years ago, we were talking about Greg Dulcich as one of the most young and exciting tight end prospects in the league. This guy pulled a 17% target share, which was 13th in the league. He was 7th in the league in air yard share. He was getting open. He was drawing targets. He was making plays after the catch. He went on a little heater in his rookie season where we said Greg Dulcich is going to be the next big thing at the tight end position, and then was hurt pretty much all of year two. So it's one of those things where I think people have just forgotten about Greg Dulcich. We forgot last offseason that they were talking about using him in this joker role where they were going to try to get him the ball as creatively as they could and as often as they could. And I think right now, you look, Cortland Sutton is really the only pass catcher there that is going to command a meaningful target share. Outside of Cortland Sutton, the number two pass catcher is up for grabs, and Adam Troutman is probably going to be involved, and they've got some other wide receivers there, but the path is clear for Greg Dulcich to become number two on this team in targets. So worth a flyer because it could be one of those things where Greg Dulcich steps on the field week one, picks off right where he left off as a healthy rookie, just dominates the snap share, dominates the target share, makes some big plays, and he could be one of the biggest waiver wire pickups that people are blowing all their fab on after week one. So pick him up for now for free, stash him, see what happens for a week, and don't end up in that potential bidding war after this week.
Immediately begins crying in Marvin Mims. Thanks for
Mm,
that.
yeah,
Mm,
I'm not buying the
mm.
Marvin Mims hype.
I mean,
Or
he's a good
Troy
player.
Franklin for that matter. I mean, there's
See,
a
I
lot
I
of
think
good
Marvin Mims is
players, but I
special.
think that, Greg Dulcich, he's gonna operate closer to the line of scrimmage, which is better for Bo Nix, where Troy
Oh,
Franklin
yeah.
and Marvin Mims, they're gonna be getting deeper downfield, which is gonna open up even more underneath stuff for Greg Dulcich. So I think that just looking at how this offense is going to operate, like I said, Courtland Sutton, I think he's gonna be number one on the team in targets, but Greg Dulcich could easily be number two.
See, I think it's gonna be a running back. I think it's gonna end up being Sutton,
It
2
could be.
running backs, and then Dulcich, but that's still, once again, could be valuable. He's athletic enough where he can make things work there. Let's go to the next player here. I want to talk about Andrei Iosivas, the wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. And he's available in 95% of leagues. And I think with the Jamar Chase drama going on, I think we all still expect him to play, right, Dave? Like, what would you put the
Mhm.
percentage at for him playing week one?
It was like 90% last night, and I'd say it's 80% now, probably 70%
Oh,
tomorrow if he's still not practicing. It's going down, but I'm still giving it about an 80% likelihood.
okay. I was just kind of keeping it like around 95% and not being worried at all, but that might just be because I don't have a lot of Jamar Chase in my rosters, so I'm just like it's out of my brain. But Andrei Iosivas, he was already going to have a role as the third wide receiver on on this team, on the Bengals team, and we know this is an offense that's probably going to be a little bit more pass heavy without Joe Mixon and uh, Dave. We go back and look. I think we forget, even though it wasn't sexy, it wasn't always explosive. Tyler Boyd was quietly just really productive year after year after year as the Bengals wide receiver two or wide receiver three. We're looking at him. He was a wide receiver three in each of the last 5 seasons, a wide receiver three or better in each of the last 5 seasons prior to last year, where he was still just right on the cusp of being a wide receiver four. And I think that's probably what you can get here with Yoshivas as a wide receiver four. I do understand there's a lot of hype around Mike Gesicki being on this team and what he can do at the tight end position. Guys, I'm telling you, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I don't talk about it a lot because they've hurt me plenty of times. Mike Gesicki's hurt me enough times. This is not the guy that's going to be standing in the way of someone else producing. He'll make a few plays here and there, but Andrei Iosivas is a guy I think, especially at the wide receiver position and the type of explosive offense that is there in Cincy. This is a guy I'm willing to take a shot on, especially from what we've seen in the past with Joe Burrow and these slot receivers and or just wide receiver three in general on this offense. And Bengals, there's a lot of weird turmoil, Dave. I'm not sure quite what to make of it. Maybe I'm a little too confident about the Jamar Chase thing.
Yeah, and I just want to say I understand where you're getting at with the Tyler Boyd comp in that like this offense can support 3+ pass catchers, but
Yes.
Tyler Boyd and Andrei Iosivas couldn't be more different players.
I'm
Tyler
not saying they're
Boyd,
the same.
yeah, yeah, and I think like where Tyler Boyd, you were kind of looking at a high floor, low ceiling outcome on a weekly basis, where Iosivas is going to be the complete opposite. He might not be drawing, 5 to 7 targets per game like Tyler Boyd did, but this is a guy who is 6'3" and runs a 4.43 40. Like he can blow the top off of any defense. He can get behind cornerbacks. He can make the big plays, and I think that's kind of what you're expecting from Iosivas. And I also want to say that while we're recording right now, it's Tuesday morning. The episode comes out a couple hours after we record it. The Bengals just released their week 1 depth chart, and Iosivas is the clear wide receiver 3. Jermaine Burton, who people were getting really excited about this offseason, is buried right now as the wide receiver 5. We've heard murmurs out of Cincinnati that he's not really picking up the playbook, that he has struggled to get up to speed in
Did
camp.
you did
And
you hear the rumor that he is sleeping in meetings?
I've heard about
Al
that. Yep.
Michaels, of all people, the one
Mhm.
dropping that
Yeah.
Jermaine Burton is sleeping through meetings, and Jermaine Burton immediately came out and was like, "No, that's not happening. I don't know where this is coming from."
Yeah. Well, Jošević, haven't heard anything about him sleeping in practice, so I'm pretty excited about him. And he's just, he's a freak athlete who can score big plays on a good offense. I want that. The other thing I got to mention it, Alfredo, because that Bengals report just came out.
Mm.
Zach Moss listed as the running back 1, and Chase Brown listed as the primary kick returner. So Twitter is in shambles right now that Zach Moss is presumed to be the running back 1.
But we've heard all offseason that
I
it's not
know,
gonna
I know,
matter. It's
I
running
know.
back 1A, 1B.
But
I
Orlando
mean,
Brown told me to spend a first-round pick on Chase Brown, and I passed
well,
on McCaffrey for Chase Brown, and now Orlando
that's
Pace
on
has
you.
some questions to answer.
That's Orlando pays him too, yeah. Uh, no, don't take your fantasy advice from offensive linemen. I'm not worried. Okay,
We'll move
let's bring
on.
this all
We'll
back
move
in.
on.
No,
We
no,
got
hold
totally
on.
off the rails
No,
there.
no. I need to bring this back in and
Did I
tie
say
a bow.
Orlando Pace instead of
You
Orlando
did,
Brown?
and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
okay.
going
It's
way
okay.
back with my offensive tackles.
I also want to do a whole thing on Yoshivas, and
Mhm.
then I'm also hearing you Yoshevich, and let's just call him Yoshi. All right, let's just go there. He's Yoshi. That's it. Let's make this easier. Yeah, I'm not worried about the running back thing. Kyron Williams is also returning punts for the Rams. Like, let's not freak out about this, guys. Let's not. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Dave, you got Cam Akers, running back for the Houston Texans. Just when I'm out, you pull me back in. Cam Akers available in 96% of leagues.
He's coming off some injuries over the last couple of years, and I wasn't crazy about the prospect, but as I've talked about so much this offseason, Dameon Pierce is just an awful fit for the run scheme that they're running here in Houston. And all indications are that Cam Akers is the RB2 here. So I like Joe Mixon. I expect him to be heavily involved. I'm very high on Joe Mixon in my draft and my week 1 rankings, but Joe Mixon, all it takes is an injury to open up opportunity, and Cam Akers seems to be the guy that would be the number 1 benefactor in injury to Joe Mixon. So right now he's available in what is it? I know you've got the numbers pulled up, Alfredo. 96, 97% of
96% of
leagues,
leagues.
something crazy like that. So again, this is nothing but an injury stash and probably only in your deep leagues. But Houston Texans, good offense. Joe Mixon is going to be the RB1. Cam Akers is going to be the RB2. This is just purely a handcuff, but maybe we're surprised and we see some sort of split here where there could be standalone value. Akers is a former second-round pick. A lot of people really like the prospect that he was when he came into the league. It has just been injuries and feuding with Sean McVay through his NFL career so far, but now he's got a fresh slate here in Houston and worth a bench stash in your deeper leagues.
Yeah, it's so weird because, like, what type of scenario are we ever saying? Here's a running back that has had so many injuries that we are willing to go back to the well. And I think a lot of it has
Yeah.
to do with one, the draft pedigree, the offense is quite good. And are you worried at all about Joe Mixon's age? Is that something that like even pops up for you, or is this a little bit more about just, hey man, like let's just have handcuffs?
Mixon is kind of, outside of that injury that he had, what was it, 2021, I believe? No, 2020. He had that weird injury early in the season that lingered all year and eventually shut down
Mhm.
his year. Outside of that, he's been pretty healthy. Didn't miss a game last year, missed 3 games in 2022, missed 1 game in 2021. I mean, if you're missing 4 games over a 3-year stretch, that's pretty reliable for a running
Mm.
back. So, um, you know, uh, this isn't like we talk about like Ty Chandler being a premium handcuff because Aaron Jones always deals with injury and Trey Benson being a guy that we want to stash because James Conner always deals with injury. We're not really saying that about Joe Mixon. He has been relatively healthy through this point in his career, but any running back can get injured at any time. We just know that's the nature of a volatile position like running backs. So even though Joe Mixon might have a cleaner injury than most other running backs, still willing to take Akers for the upside.
Yeah, I think it's just finding players that you think have talent on good offenses. Just it works. It works in fantasy football. And then when the opportunity comes, you're ready to go. I think this feels like the Bizarro or the anti version of like our Tank Bigsby thing, where it's like, I don't really know that he's that good, but the offense is gonna be fine and the opportunity would be great. And then I think that's where we get with Cam Akers. Like he actually was really good when he played.
Yeah.
Ah, those were the days, man. Those were the days. All right, let's get to the final player here. I want to talk about Dylan Laube, running back for the Las Vegas Raiders. I actually went and added him this morning in our Football Guys Fantasy Football League listener draft. This is a player that I think is going to, one, already have a ton of work on third downs, on passing downs, something that I think that we all really wanted for Zamir White. And it's just the closer and closer we get to the season, it really feels like, yeah, he'll still get the majority of the work, but it does seem like we are going to get a few of these other players getting worked in, specifically Laube as a guy
Mhm.
who's going to be a pass catcher. And Dave, I don't know if you saw this over the weekend, or maybe it just popped up for me over the weekend, that the rumor is that Devontae Adams will be a New York Jet by week 6 at the latest. It was like a very oddly specific time frame, but that it is happening and there is no way to stop it.
I mean, we said that when we were recording that live show in Canton where we were getting word the day before. We're like, that's like kind of what everybody was saying, that it's only a matter of time. And yeah, I mean, it's just the way drafts have worked out. It's not that I'm like fading Garrett Wilson, but I just haven't had the 10th pick much. So I don't have a lot of Garrett Wilson this year, and I feel okay about that. But yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like it's only a matter of time before Devontae Adams is a New York Jet.
And if that happens, right? And it's a lot of ifs to climb up that mountain and get to where we are saying that this player, Dylan Laube, becomes incredibly valuable for fantasy. If that happens, though, like there is a very real world where Dylan Laube might be top 3 on this team in targets, where you're probably looking at like a Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, and Dylan Laube being the guys that are catching passes nonstop from Gardner Minshew, who we saw last year. Like he can actually manage an offense. And I do worry that so much of Zamir White's value is going to be baked into how much volume can he get. And if you have guys that can go out there and do similar things or different things, in Laube's instance, there's probably not as many snaps out there for him. David, I will say this. I don't know how much it truly matters on the utilization of a player on the field, but Raiders GM Tom Telesco was previously with the Chargers for years and years and years and years and years. And this feels very much like the late round
Austin
running
Eckler.
back, undrafted running back, Austin Eckler style of scat back, satellite back who can catch passes that might be better at running than we really think. I don't know how much that's going to matter, but I do think that you draft a player like this with a design in mind. You don't sit there and just draft a guy and be like, yeah, let's see what works out.
Yeah.
There had to have been talks with Antonio Pierce and how he can be used. So Dylan Laube, last guy on here that I am willing to go and grab off of waivers.
Just back to it a little bit, that listener league draft that we did. And, we
Mm,
talked about Devontae Adams. We expect him to be a Jet. We've been saying that for a while. I've talked a lot this offseason about not being super in on Brock Bowers, but I read that report right before we did that draft. And I'm sure you saw I waited on tight end and picked up Brock Bowers. Only redraft share I have of Brock Bowers, but that was heavily influenced by me reading just hours before that draft that Devontae Adams was likely out of Vegas. And if he is, then the stage is set for a huge rookie season and rookie season usage for Brock Bowers.
yeah, I gotta say, I absolutely hate my team in that league.
Well, you were
Absolutely hate my
drafting
team.
12 espresso martinis deep from Brazil while I was
Okay,
locked in
not
at the ward
12.
station with my 2 screens fully plugged in, just immersed in NFL while you're, I don't know what you're doing in Brazil, but I'm sure
Yeah,
it
I was
was
about
just
to say, don't paint this picture of me. It was 2 espresso martinis. I was at dinner. I was getting dirty looks from my wife. I was on my phone with the whole bunch. It was not a great time. Not a great
yeah.
time, but we made it work.
Yeah, I had this weekend was just somehow I avoided drafts yesterday, but like all day Saturday, all day Sunday was just like different drafts in different leagues from sun up till sundown. And you spend so much time in best ball when we're doing these like underdog drafts where you want to diversify your portfolio and make sure you're getting exposure to all the players and team builds and things like that. This weekend was so much fun just going out and getting my guys. Like, I decided in my rankings that Cooper Cup should be going at the top of round two. So I ended up with Cooper Cup on almost every single team of mine because his ADP on sleepers in round three. And, Amon St. Brown and Cooper Cup ended up being my first and second round start in almost every single league. So let's hope that it works out for us this year. Those were my guy last year and my guy this year, and hoping we can go 2 for 2.
I'm not gonna lie, I did not get like any of my guys in our draft. Everyone was
You
was
got
reaching
the
for players.
weirdest draft. Yeah.
I drafted a bunch of players that I never draft anywhere and have none of. Jahmyr Gibbs, Marvin Harrison Jr., DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, George Pickens. I was like, cool, this is an interesting start. And then I was just like, oh man, all right, Zamir White, Christian Watson. I just started like panic picking players. I did do the Taysom Hill, TJ Hawkinson tight end stack going on there. And then I was like, sure,
I
let's
loved it. Yep.
sprinkle some Rico Dowdle, who I never draft. Don't know what the heck was going on there. And of course, when I do that, I miss out on Ray Davis because you picked Ray Davis. And
Yep.
honestly, you had me tilting because you kept getting all of the running backs that I like to get in that era. Ty Chandler, Ray Davis. I was freaking out at dinner, man. I was freaking out. And I
Can I
couldn't.
just read off some
Yeah.
of, because I know the listeners are obviously listening to this episode, and this was about as on brand as a team could get for me. I got Kyler Murray, the sliding quarterback that I've said, everybody needs to be drafting this year. My wide receivers are Amon St. Brown, Cooper Cup, and Jalen Waddle, 3 of my guys. Flex spots are filled with Tank Dell and Rashi Rice, 2 guys that I've been clamoring for. And then this bench right here is what really, really gets me excited. Ray Davis, Jalen Wright, Ty Chandler, Jordan Mason, Jonnu Smith, Xavier Leggett. It worked out for me. It was a fun draft for me, Alfredo. I'm sorry it didn't
Clip
go the way
that.
that you had
Somebody
planned.
clip that. Someone clip that. This is what really gets me excited. It's just you listing off Jordan Mason, Xavier Leggett, Jonnu Smith.
But I took a 0 running back approach and still ended up with Najee Harris and Tajay Spears. Like that's
Yeah.
not too bad for waiting until round 8 to get your RB1.
No, it's not bad at all. And I was actually really surprised I was able to get Joe Burrow so
Hmm.
late in this league. This was a 6 point per passing touchdown league. So to get him in round 8, that was pretty awesome to do. But yeah, it was weird. Like this was, I wish you guys could have seen me just tilting live at the dinner table. This is a 3 wide receiver league, right? That's why I
Hmm.
went so wide receiver heavy early. Yeah, and it just kept just not getting any of my guys. It was an absolute nightmare. So there you go. Don't drink and draft, or dinner and draft, or do all 3 at the same time.
But I'll
It's
also
awful.
say I was drafting from the middle. I believe I had the 7th pick, and you were drafting from the end. And
10
it
spot.
is so much easier when you're drafting from the middle. You can kind of reach for your guys, and you don't feel as bad at it. I feel like anytime you're drafting from the top or the end of the draft, and you're kind of at the edges of the draft board, every time you think like, oh, this player will make it back to me, and then, every play in your queue just goes out the window, and then you're just tilting at the turn. It is a lot easier when you're drafting from the middle of the board because you can kind of dictate those runs a little bit, and you can reach for the positions that force other people. I'd say just on a large scale discussion, it's much easier to draft from the middle than it is from the ends.
Man, drafting at the 10 spot out of 12 teams, 60-second clock, 2 espresso martinis deep,
Yeah.
trying to eat family style in Brazil. This
It
was,
it was that 16th martini that did you in.
oh man, 16th martini. Yeah. Yeah. It was an absolute nightmare. All right. That is enough for us. We've rambled on long enough. Thank you guys
Are we
so
doing
much.
another show, or is this it and then the season kicks off? I should probably know what our schedule is. Are we
We
doing a show
should, yeah,
tomorrow?
we're gonna do something. We're gonna do something. We haven't
Cool.
quite. We're just gonna surprise the listeners. We're gonna surprise everyone.
You're
We're gonna
gonna
surprise
surprise
ourselves.
me.
We're gonna surprise ourselves. That's right. Well, NFL Week 1 is here. Games kick off on Thursday. We will be back. As always, want to thank you guys for watching and listening all the way through. We'll see you next time. Adios.